Do you love pork pies? Chicken pie? Pies of the meatless variety? I bet that you do, and I also bet that when you buy them you only consider what is written on the label and not what is actually inside the pie itself. After all, there are laws and rules as to what can go inside the food, and it has to be what's advertised. Right? However, there have been so many scandals recently to do with our food, from Skittles no longer being considered food safe to the Great Horse Fiasco of a couple of years ago, where horse meat was found inside lasagna and other meals that were supposed to contain beef. That you have to wonder if, even if there are regulations, are they being strictly adhered to or enforced? If we're finding things like this now, what would it have been like in the past? Is it because of the bad ingredients that these regulations were brought into place in the first place? I mean, you do know the answer to that, but it's not often that you'll find meat in your vegan pies or beef replaced with horse. It's not like there's human meat in there, is it? Is it? So it's one of those tattoo subjects that comes up in the food history every now and again. Let me tell you, it's actually really interesting and a whole new topic of conversation. But there are so many different examples of human meat being eaten at many points in history, from the burial ceremonies of South American tribes, Roman feasts and festivals, to even as recent as the Victorian period, where some parts of the human body were eaten for their medicinal purposes. I cannot pronounce that word. But how crazy is that? And everyone complains about Chinese medicine, I mean, come on. But I don't think that there's ever use of the human body parts there, but just don't quote me on it, it's not something I've really looked into too much. There are stories of cannibalism all over the place, such as Sawney Bean, who influenced the mythical Sweeney Todd. And although this barber is the most famous of them, he is not the only one to come out of this period of the Penny Dreadfuls. Thankfully, or not, people like Mr. Sudenheim, God rest his soul, took him out of the dreary Victorian period, shook him off and created something for more modern audiences, and cemented his place as the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, which again is a whole area of lore unto itself, and if you want a video of that, then I'll happily do it, but that has nothing really to do with video games. I got way into that musical a couple of years ago, so I could go on forever. Well, anyway, this all leads into a roundabout way to the game that I am talking about today. It leads pretty well from Sweeney Todd 2. This game is called Ravenous Devils, where you play as the Rhodes, a couple newly moved into London to set up a new business in their new home that they have just purchased. Who did they purchase it from? Well, a famous barber no longer living in the area. They even have a similar business style to this previous occupant and just serves them as well. Percival is the man of the family and he's really very handy with a pair of scissors. Make of that what you will. And his wife Hildred is a charming young woman who cooks some absolutely wonderful dishes. Can you see where this is going? You guessed it, they are a murdering pair of cannibals like Mr. Todd before them, and only now instead of a barber there is a tailor above the pub. Percival kills some of his clients, steals their clothing and then reuses the fabric to create an outfit he sells for a modest fee, of course. He then passes Hildred the corpse, who makes them into delicious meat pies. Well, and other recipes as well. Unlike Mrs. Lovett, Hildred is a proper chef, creating lasagnas, meatballs, soup and full grill meals out of the meat her husband lovingly supplies for her. However, they are not getting away with this as scot-free as they think they are. Oh no, they have a knowing associate, who obviously knows their secret. Unlike with Sweeney Todd, however, this associate is very rich and very powerful and is mostly on their side. So there is only a very slim possibility that they will get caught, and if they do, then they have a high value backer who will bail them out. Well, for a price, of course. This Mr. J, a Joker reference, anyone? Isn't going to just do this out of the kindness of his own heart, however. Oh no. His protection comes with some provisos. He has people that he wants you to kill, obviously, but he also wants you to butcher them and serve them him in a brilliant feast that is made out of his friends. That's right, these people are his friends, and he wants you to kill and cook them for him. However, it's not just that. He won't support you if you can't keep your reputation up with the local population. After all, why would he want a subpar chef to create his dream banquet? Would you? So that leads into the actual gameplay itself, where you have to balance your kills with making food and clothing. The game is pretty good at slowly easing you into this gameplay mechanic, and the tutorial is pretty in-depth and easy to follow, making the day slightly longer just so that you can get to grips with how and why of the workings. You control both of the characters, but only on their own levels. The top 2 levels are Percival's, the Tailor's, and also the greenhouse, though you do not get access to this at the beginning of the game. The lower 2 levels are the pub and the kitchen. Percival has mannequins that he must keep stocked with his clothing, while also helping to supply Hildred with the meat for her dishes, while Hildred must run the pub and the kitchen down below. As you progress further, as with most simulation games, there are extra gameplay elements that are introduced to create more pressure on your resources while also offering greater rewards. Hildred gets tables that allows her pub to act more like a restaurant and means that she now has to cook specific meals while also keeping up her self-service counter. And Percival also has to ensure the greenhouse runs well enough that his lovely wife can do what she needs to do with the fresh vegetables that he grows. And eggs. I'm not sure how the eggs work, but they do. Instead of detracting from the gameplay, these extra elements really add to it. Now, not only do you have to keep your bodies for meat, but also for their compostable tendencies. Because if you don't keep both options in mind, you can't grow the tomatoes and other foods that are required for you to keep the kitchen running at full steam. While you might think this is tedious, the developer has actually kept the gamer in mind and given you options to not only improve the yield of your corpses and plants, but to also make the compost last longer so that you don't need to fill it up as much. A great example of a developer thinking of the gamer before the game. I really like this mechanic, but how do I make it fit my player? A really great example of something that often gets overlooked in today's gameplay development. Sometimes I might add, at least in games like Undungeon. I'm not going to get back into that one, I was pissed off enough then. Basically, while not seeming challenging due to its gentle learning curve, if you were thrown in at the beginning without knowing what was going on, it can be pretty hard to keep up. It's not a terribly difficult game by any means, it's something fun to play, and it's even short enough story-wise that you can complete in about one 5-hour sitting. However, once the main story is over, there are still a couple of other NPCs to interact with and achievements to get, but it's all over and just fun, dark, human simulation game. Perfect for that person that loves those cooking and restaurant games, but is also looking for something slightly different. The resource manager who also wants a laugh, or someone that just wants to try something different. It's not horrendously expensive either, so I really do recommend that you give it a go.